Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming at you again for another Film Fanatic video. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Wednesday at about just about 10:30. So yeah, lately for this channel, been watching a bunch of new movies. So it's been fun. I always try to mix things up. Always more or less brainstorming for new shows and new ideas, mixing it up between doing like the individual review videos where I'm talking about specific movies. And most of the videos I do on this channel are in the exploitation world. My first and foremost, that's my kind of my deepest love. And I'm always surprised by the amount of folks that chime in to those videos. They seem to get the most activity, which I'm really surprised, and really, for that matter, really, fired up by that. That there's folks out there that are interested in a lot of these weird, obscure movies that I cover. That's my passion. But again, I love big Hollywood blockbusters as well. I did a show on the latest John Wick movie, Chapter 4, which I think is pretty much an action masterpiece. I think it's probably, it's safe to say for me, it's my favorite in the entire franchise. That was the last movie that I saw in the theater. I'm looking forward to some more movies coming out in a couple of weeks. There's some good releases coming up. Gonna try to really see them in the theater. The new Evil Dead Rise, which is the next installment in the Evil Dead franchise. I did a whole coverage of those films. Love that franchise to death. That's coming out. The new Evil Dead is coming out really soon, within the next. I don't know if it's coming out this week or the week after, but I'm gonna try my hardest to go see that. That will be definitely a must see in the theater experience. John Wick, I that was the last movie I saw that just about 2 weeks ago. I saw that in the theater, and I was recommending that to a friend yesterday that I saw, and I was talking to him about this channel, and how it's been a blast, and it's a lot of fun. I'm always thinking of new ideas and trying to learn some new things. And I was saying, again, I was mentioning to him, he was asking how Film Fanatic is going, and I said, yeah, it's I do a video every day, and you know, and he was asking, like, how many subscribers do I have, and all those kinds of things. And I was saying, well, it's going good, and and it's been a pretty slow and steady uh, increase of everything, with like people liking the page, and there's been more folks commenting, which I really love. But I was saying, yeah, I'm like blown away by that, by the fact that the films that when I cover, you know, the real obscure films, the real obscure exploitation movies, that those get them, the biggest hits. And I was saying, like, I'm really surprised by that. And I was making a comparison to where, like, I did a show on James Cameron's Avatar movies. I saw The Way of Water in the theater, and I did a show on that, and then I did a show on the first Avatar, and then I also did a show on James Cameron. And the James Cameron show that I did, where I just talked about him as a director, that was a really big one. That was one of the biggest ones I've had as far as views, at about three or 4,000. But the Avatar ones were good too. They performed pretty well as far as people checking them out. But I was saying, at the same time, the coverage of these really obscure films, like, eclipses the amount of people that have checked out those videos. And I'm like, wow, like, that's crazy. And he was saying, well, it's probably just because those movies are already so talked about, which makes a lot of sense. But I was talking to him about how I do most of the focus is the real like low budget underground kind of stuff. The real obscure kind of gems that I've been discovering. But I said, yeah. At the same time, I just did a show on the new John Wick movie, and I was mentioning to him like, kind of stressing the point that that's a movie to definitely go see in the theater. Like it's a totally uh, amazing immersive experience, and that's like a primetime example of why people should go to the theater. Like it's amazing. So that was a big recommendation that I had for a friend that I was talking to about as far as new movies. The other movie I'm really excited about seeing is the new Ari Aster movie. He has a new movie. I can't remember the title of it right now offhand, but it's with Joaquin Phoenix, and it looks wild. And Ari Aster, is one of my favorite, more modern horror directors. Of course, he did Hereditary, which is I think a masterpiece in horror as far as contemporary horror goes. He also did Midsummer, which I think is just a tremendous movie, another killer movie. He also did this really uh, pretty. It's pretty hard to watch. It's pretty harsh. All his stuff is very edgy. He really pushes the envelope as far as some of the taboo subjects that he goes into, and that's one of the things I really love about him as a filmmaker is that he'll push you to a point to your threshold, and I think that's I think filmmaking, yeah, to a degree, it's got to be about whatever style it is or whatever, however big your budget is. They're in the art of entertainment, and you want to take the audience on a ride first and foremost. But I also think it's cool when there could be things of where you're there's a lot of depth to a lot of films, and if you actually the films that really have lasting power always have some kind of deeper resonation with an audience where you'll be talking about it after you've experienced it, and that's attributed to that it could it actually has some meat and potatoes to it. It has some depth to it. It could be something of where it might be to a degree a critique on how we are as a people in this society, in this day and age, or tackle various other social subjects, or it could just be not dealing with that per se, but it could just have a level of complexity to it, and there's lots of different colors, lots of different shades, and I attribute that to being like some movies are like, certain films can be like peeling an onion. There's all these layers to it. So a lot of the times, films that have those attributes, those films tend to stay in the consciousness of the viewer, and for the most part, they're the ones that are going to be remembered. Those are the ones that are going to be talked about. And I feel like Ari Aster's films are like that. But he did this one film which is a short movie. There's something about the Johnsons, which is really amazing, but also because of how far he pushes some of the taboos and the exploration of certain taboos, it's generally kind of an uncomfortable experience. But like that being said, about films that have lasting power, I think aside from the art or the business of being, as far as what directors are doing and writers and in the film industry, you're first and foremost, they're entertainers. They're meant to try to entertain people. But I think when you have there's a maybe like the onion analogy, that's a really great thing to get uh, the viewers, the filmmakers get the hooks in the viewers, and that will you'll want to, if you have, as a viewer, if you have that experience, you'll probably want to revisit that movie, and you might get something else out of it each time because there's layers. But I also think too, part of being a filmmaker and an artist to a degree really, it could be dance or acting or a musician or painter. Part of it, I think, is being a provocateur, where you're not afraid to kind of push the limits or push the boundaries. It's okay to make people question things, and it's also okay to make people feel maybe uneasy or uncomfortable at certain things because and that usually comes from a lot of societal restraints of things that people think about but they're unwilling to talk about or address. And that's a daily thing in our lives. We have that all the time in our relationships with people. People we are friends with, people that we are in love with, people who we are strictly friends with, or people that we're business partners with, or where we have those relationships of where we're in business with them, but then we're also, personal friends. And sometimes that can be an added complexity to the relationship because you have to be able to, I find in my own situation when and that happens, that's a situation I'm in quite a bit of where I'm friends with a lot of my coworkers to a degree and but yet we're in business together also. So having I find for myself I have to wear kind of two different hats in how I address those things and not like let both let those things like spill over into each other. But at the same time we're human, so those things naturally happen. And there's always those things of where we might have issues, personal issues, or things that we want to address with other people, maybe when some potential conflicts happen, or there's maybe a disagreement, but it strikes an awkward chord. So you have to like figure out a way how to address it. And that can be pertaining to personal things, business things, or whatnot. But they could also be, a real disagreement onto certain things or views, dealing with certain things. And so, and to degrees, those are things that we maybe don't want to talk about, but they're right at the surface. So I think with filmmakers, there's a cool part of that because of that process. Because as filmmakers and artists, is that they can push that boundary a little bit because that kind of that way of the way we operate is very much that in that situation of where we do talk about things to a degree with our friends and people we know, but there's certain things you might feel that depending on the context you're not really sure on how to go there, and that can almost take up the label of a taboo to a degree. And you have to be a certain way or address that situation individually. So it's always interesting. So I think filmmakers, to a degree, can push those boundaries down of where anything is addressed, and areas that you might not want to talk about consciously. You Through the medium of art, those things are just all kind of laid out on the table. So I think that's a really cool component of the arts. And so Ari Aster, I think, is an example of a filmmaker where he is not afraid. He's very bold and courageous, I think, as a filmmaker. So he's willing to go that extra mile. First and foremost, his films are highly entertaining, but there's always these little parts to his films or to his story where he's willing to go there and push those boundaries. And I think that's really courageous and really commendable. And so like lately I've been seeing lots of newer films. I did a show on Todd Field's most recent film Tar, which is a pretty extraordinary movie. I've been covering, some other shows, the John Wick movie, which thought was, just an amazing experience. And this today's show is on. This is a sequel to yesterday's video. This is basically a sequel to this film that came out in 2018, which was the last video I did called Missing. A wonderful suspense movie. And the whole kind of premise is the way the investigation kind of unfolds before your eyes is through technology. And it's so contemporary. And it's, through the way the investigation kind of unfolds in that movie is, through all the tech that we use. Here I am talking on a screen, and it's going to be uploaded for people to see. It's personal and it's easy access, but it's also impersonal. And this film, Missing, totally captures the modern age, through text messaging, through all the various apps that we use, through email, Gmail, all the various forms of how we share information through technology, whether it's photos or videos, memes, you name it. And, it's it's the way of life. It's how we communicate. It's it's a strange and unusual thing, but I also feel it's like anything. It's got its really great attributes or great things around it, but then it's also has a very negative thing around it too. I think, and again, in my own, and I think these films, and Missing, which I did a show on yesterday, perfectly captures our our way of how, you know in 2023, on how we interact with other people. Where it's all through technology, and it's personal, but yet I think it's incredibly impersonal. And there's always this, I don't know, protective fence around everything, or there's always this strange buffer. So, and I think, and in my own personal view, I feel like there's this idea that people are, because of technology, that people are, there's less boundaries, there's less, less borders. I think with music and art, like now it's easier for artists to get their content out there and to share things. You don't necessarily have to rely on like your typical distribution kinds of deals. You can kind of do things your own. You can really build an audience through all these things. You can share ideas with people. You can communicate with people quicker and easier. You can share information to a degree. So there's this idea that, and there's less barriers. So like you have the option to be exposed to, many different things, more now than ever, to a degree. But it's, there's 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 this mindset or this idea that people are closer than ever. And I actually, in my own opinion, I feel like it's totally the opposite. I feel like there is this disconnect that's never been so dominant. I feel like there's this. I kind of feel the idea that we're so connected now because of the digital age, that people are closer now than ever. And that seems to be the general consensus. But I actually feel like we're actually more isolated than we've ever been. Um, because you take, for example, just when people would when people had landlines and people talk on the phone. When you're talking with somebody on the phone, you 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 get a sense of how that person is feeling. You can get a sense of their emotional state, and obviously, if you're in person with that person, through body language and just the way their dialogue, the way they're speaking to you, you can get a sense of how that person is feeling in that moment or that particular day or that particular week, usually right away. And most people don't believe in talking on phones anymore. So now everything is through texting and through this kind of simulated way of communicating, which in a lot of ways is quick and easy and convenient. There isn't the obligation to converse with people for a long period of time, especially if you're doing other things. So you can just throw it out there, but at the same time, you have no awareness of body language or what maybe state of mind that person is in. So it's very hard to take to understand the context of maybe how somebody is expressing themselves. So a lot of the times things can be read wrong, or things can be taken out of context, or taken in maybe the wrong way. So again, I feel like because of that, and that's how we interact with people regularly. Because of that, I feel like there is this bigger disconnect amongst people more than ever. And I feel generally it's harder to understand where people are at now than ever, and to try to convey emotionally what is behind those words or behind those meanings. So but again, it's technology, so you can't stop it. You can't check out. I mean, it's there because people are enabling this process and are buying into it. So it's an interesting thing. I think it has a very dystopian tone to it. To a degree, it's also very tragic. I do think there are some really amazing attributes to it, but again, it's a very slippery thing. And I think these movies, Missing, and this today's review, Searching, does the best job I've ever seen as far as a contemporary movie with capturing how we how we interact with people, how we access information. But the best thing about these films, and this brings me to today's film, which is Searching, which is looked at as kind of the sequel to Missing. And Missing was directed by Anish Chagnati. In this film, Searching, which came out this year, to 2023, came out in early January, I believe. And this was written by Anish Chagnati, but there are two different directors on this film, Nicholas Johnson and Will Merrick. But it's essentially the same filmmakers, the same team that worked on Missing. And Sending is just an awesome movie. I think it's such a great thriller. And I think both films are they're just top-notch thrillers. They very much remind me. I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan. They really remind me of that way of telling a story. Highly suspenseful the whole way through. Really great characters. And considering that there is again, there's this buffer to a degree because you're seeing people not in person per se, but you're seeing them through all of these digital lenses, through texting and video chats and emails and all these kinds of things. But they're at the core. I feel like these guys, these filmmakers, really focused with the foundation being the really set in stone first, and the foundation being just how to tell a really great story, giving you just enough characters or characterizations of these characters where you're really engaged, and even though like it's set up in this very contemporary kind of light, which it completely captures 100%. But at the core, the writing is just so damn good. I had talked about this in my video yesterday, or Chris Stuckman, who is a really fabulous YouTube guy. He's one of the best guys on YouTube. His focus is usually always on new movies, so that's usually how I check out new films that come out, new movies that I hear about, and generally I really agree with his reviews like about 99% of the time. And he was saying, like, at face value, you would think that these movies are, maybe if you see the trailer for the first time or you read about it, it's because it's so focused on the digital aspect of how we interact as people. Maybe it's it's a gimmick. It's a shtick to sell tickets, and that's really all it is. And it's just going to be about you know tech popping at you every second. And but he said no, it's really not. He's like, if you get to the source, like the foundation of the story is the thing that's so well done and crafted, and then the exterior is the tech, and totally nailed it. Like at face value, you would think, oh, maybe this is just kind of a gimmicky thing because it's trendy, it's something that kids would like, it's something that we naturally do on how we interact. So maybe that's really all it's about. But if you dig into this story, no, it's like if you took away the tech stuff, there's still the both of these movies are just really great. I think in a lot of ways contemporary versions of like classic Hitchcock stories, really great. And again, great characters, great characterizations, great writing. The level of suspense in these films is kind of through the roof. Really blown away. Searching again is such a great film. I was literally grabbing on to my chair at moments. I mean, it's kind of nail biting suspense, and really keep. And I felt like it really kept me guessing. It had all these really cool twists and turns, a lot of interesting plot shifts. Really great film. Really great films. Both films. I'm really looking forward to. I don't own either of these movies, and I just watched Searching the like 2 days ago. We actually watched it on Easter with my family, and my folks really loved it, and they had seen Missing also, and they really loved it. And we talked about that afterwards, where it's at the core, take away all the tech stuff, they're just really great suspense movies. And but really high level, really well done. And I look forward. I don't own either of these movies, but I really want to get them on Blu-ray. I think because of the technology, the production element is really great. The music is really great. The editing is fantastic. I think from the production element and the way it's shot, and the music is really awesome. I think getting these on Blu-ray would be just a really awesome experience. So yeah, definitely check out Searching and also the video I did yesterday on Missing. Tremendous movies. If you're a fan of like really classic thriller movies, like in the vein of Hitchcock, definitely check these out. They're super entertaining, great murder mystery movies, really, essentially, and but as contemporary as can be. So this is Jason Dean. So thanks again for supporting this channel. If you feel free to subscribe to this channel and keep the comments coming. And I really appreciate the love. And we will see you next time. Peace.